This is Gary Atencio with CNTV, and today we're in New Jersey. Once again, we are with the end-of-life doula. He's basically providing companionship, comfort, and guidance to those facing a terminal illness or their end-of-life journey. I am joined here with the international doula. Marc, thanks so much for joining us here today.
Gary, thank you for having me back.
It's a great pleasure. Let's start off a little bit about yourself. I mean, basically, your non-medical support encompasses emotional, spiritual, and practical care. You offer resources to help the end-of-lifer, as well as helping their family and loved ones really to make informed decisions in a supportive environment. Share with me a little bit, first of all, in my audience, how you got started in this line of work.
Fluke. I spent 45 years as a stagehand doing Broadway and meetings, and I had been doing hybrid meetings, streaming them. And, at the beginning of COVID, that all stopped. For 10 months, I was out of work, nothing. And a friend of mine's mom died, and she asked me to stream her mother's funeral from the funeral parlor. They liked what I did, so they started hiring me. In the 3 years of COVID, I did 500 funerals. And one of them, I started doing what's called live funerals. People who had COVID were aware they were going to pass soon, and they wanted to be at their funerals, their life celebrations. They wanted to make it happy things. In that time, people were trying to find anything to make something happy. And one of the gentlemen said to me, you'd make a great end-of-life doula, which I didn't even know what it was. So I researched it, and the rest is history.
The rest is history. Here we are today, the second time I've had you on the show, and we've had a lot of great comments about the first one we did, so I thought we'd add on to this. We're talking about phrases like end of life, final chapter, last rites, final curtain, the home stretch, or the winter of one's life. I mean, no matter how we say it, we're all going to experience this period of our life. Yet we don't like to talk about it, and some of us don't even like to think about it. Would you say that's the case?
Absolutely. And I'm trying to turn those expressions to the transitioning from one life to another. I'm not saying I believe in reincarnation, but all of us believe in some form of afterlife, whether it be heaven, whether it be reincarnation. One of the things I've been reminding people of at their death is they live on in the hearts of their loved ones. So yes, that's a whole nother way for your body, your energy to live on. I got told the other day by a group of ministers that I have created my own ministry.
Wow, I believe that. I mean, that's exactly what it is, because no matter what you believe, what happens to us after we're gone, I think most of us would think that we definitely still live on in some way. That is very true. Marc, how do you help a dying person, first of all, identify and then articulate their wishes for their end of their life?
Most people know what they want, how they want their body disposed of, how they want to deal with whatever medical problems they can have. I just work with them to get it on paper and to get it out to their families and their loved ones, so they make sure that they understand it. And it's not just an understanding. A lot of people, I saw this happen when my mom died. My sister, she was making emotional decisions on how my mother should be treated and what should happen with my mother based on her emotions and her desires, not my mother's, because she never sat down with my mother to talk about it. It's one thing to read it on a piece of paper, but when you have that one-on-one conversation with somebody who's ailing or aging, you really get to understand why they want what they want.
So really seeing it on a piece of paper, crystallizing the thinking really of this individual, much better than making decisions when we're in that moment of emotion. I mean, there are many practical requirements, like getting to and from the doctor, simple tasks that now may seem overwhelming. Can you help both physically and even virtually as an international doula.
Yeah, because I found in the States, at least, every county has some kind of senior transport. A big friend, a big support mechanism for me is Lyft and Uber. So I'll help people and make arrangements. Those that can't afford it, I take money out of my pocket and pay for their Uber to the doctor and arrange for them to get home.
You're talking about practical things that you've been able to help people with. I think that's fantastic. It is a ministry because they get overwhelmed at that moment. There's so much to do. Beyond assisting them to get medical care, what are some of the practical and emotional needs that you address to help a person die on their own terms?
I want them to die gracefully. And what I mean by gracefully is that they have completed any kind of estrangement or ill will towards others that they have in their head. And I don't necessarily mean that they get in contact with those people. Sometimes they don't, but at least evaluate and be complete. So they go to their deathbed peaceful.
Sometime in that moment, you don't even think about all those things. You're just helping remind people there's maybe some people special to you that you want to reach out to, or maybe not. I think that's great. And let's face it, we all live on our own terms, so we want to die on our own terms. How do you collaborate with the person as well as their family to ensure their final wishes are respected and carried out?
In most cases, I have stayed in touch with, once the passing happens, I help the families with the arrangements. I'm involved, even virtually involved. They call me for advice. They call, there are lots of questions. A lot of my patients have become looking at what's called green funerals. And that's a very unknown area around the world. So
absolutely. Yeah,
I have spent a lot of time researching it so I can help the families understand what that means.
That is exactly what a professional does. You have researched some options that they maybe never even thought about, or people have maybe touched on, but they have no idea what that encompasses. Obviously, that makes it easier for that person to make an informed decision. Now, do you find you transition your support from the dying person to their family and friends after they pass? Like you said, does that happen pretty often, would you say?
It's not as much of a transition because I try to get involved with the families before the death. So okay. I get to know the family and they get to know me so that I'm not coming out of the blue and they don't know who the hell is this guy, excuse my French. But I want to be part of them. And a lot of them, I've grown since you and I talked to be specializing because I have a lot of patience with my patients. So I've specialized in dementia and Alzheimer's patients. And that's a very hard thing for families to take on. Whether they hire a caregiver or they're a caregiver, it's very difficult. And so I'm an emotional support for them. I have 2 local dementia patients, and I actually put 3 hours a week aside for each of those families to go over and take care of the person so that the families can have time off.
That is really a blessing what you're providing. I mean, quite honestly, I always say many times a total stranger is more compassionate and patient than our own family is. And I'm sure that's something you've experienced as well. With the end of life comes grief. Do you tailor your grief support services to kind of meet the specific needs of individuals? And why is grief something that needs to be worked through for everyone?
I don't know how to answer the second part of that question. I just know it is something that everybody has to deal with in their own way. And that's why some people do very well with groups. And I run a course quarterly with a partner who is a social worker who specializes in grief. But I also do one-on-one with the families.
I can tell you're a professional because of the fact that you realize there's no one person. I mean, I've heard in the past they say everyone experiences grief differently, and we all go through it differently. So I can see how you would struggle answering a simple question like that because it's pretty complicated with all the different factors involved. Does grieving exist for both the family left behind, but also for the dying person? I mean, what practical help do you provide to help them through maybe their own grieving process?
The grief for the dying person, it's what they call it, but really what I call it, what I see it as, is a fear of the unknown. It's more of a fear of the unknown. We after talking to me very quickly, people get that dying is inevitable. And everybody who lives is going to do it.
Absolutely. I would agree with you. My grandmother's last word she said was, "I'm scared." I mean, I'm scared. I mean, of the unknown, we're all scared of the unknown. So like you say, I think it's more than grief. It's basically a fear that we're all going to experience. To these patients, you really become their friend. And so you even grieve. What personal practices or rituals do you use to process and cope with the grief yourself that is inevitably part of this type of work?
There was a course that I took. The writer of this course was the same person who wrote part of the landmark forum education practices. And it was called Caregiver Burnout Renewal. And it works on the premise that it teaches you to not take default reactions to the interruptions of life. Most people, somebody dies, you cry. If you look at and stop for a second and think about the fact that they died, you can come up with they're in a better place, they're no longer suffering, they're in a happier place. I'm happy for them because they're not suffering. You can turn those reactions around to a non-default crying. Helps get rid of the grief.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you yourself have to maintain emotional well-being and prevent professional burnout while working so closely with these patients at the end of their lives. Can you kind of share a patient who has died maybe in the past that had a profound or maybe a lasting effect on you?
It's actually very recent. A week and a half ago, in the middle of the night on a Saturday morning, about 3:00, one of my patients from Australia called me. He'd been trying to get a hold of his children for the last 4 or 5 days, and they weren't responding. And he was in hospice now. I've known him for 6 years. This was not unusual. And then I would have to step in and try to call them and get them to call him back. So I did that night, and I finally got a hold of the son, who said he would call back when he was done with the meeting in about an hour. And I called back Robert, and I told him what he said, and he said, "That's not going to be good enough." I said, "What do you mean that's not going to be good enough?" He says, "I'm dying. I'm done." And I said, "Robert, did the doctors tell you?" He said, "No, and it scares me because I'm going to die alone." So I immediately changed from a phone call to a FaceTime call. And we spent the next hour and a half talking about his family again, his kids, and what they meant to him and why it was so important to him that he not die alone. And I was saying something, I can't even remember what, and I realized that he was no longer alive.
That's a great story for us to end on. I mean, quite honestly, it's a touching story, making us realize what these folks are going through. And obviously, what you're providing these services is not it's a ministry. Like you basically say, you are out there helping folks go through this transition. Marc, lastly, how do you define success in your work with a grieving patient? And what does the end of your engagement with them typically look like?
Well, I have to. I'll go back to Robert, to that patient. What was successful? He didn't die alone. I was able to give him the fact that he did not die alone, and his family recognized it. I'm one of the things you might not be aware, Gary. I've turned myself into a nonprofit, so I don't charge my patients. I look for donations, and I'm looking for angels. And the family donated quite a large sum of money to me for thanking me for being there for their father. And that's success. That the family is touched.
That is success, absolutely. It's one of the reasons why I'm pretty picky about who I bring on the show more than one time. And quite honestly, I think this is a great nonprofit that you provide. Excellent. Thank you so much. Viewers, let's take a look at the bottom of the screen. First of all, you're going to see his website right there. I would urge you to please go out, maybe make a donation, anything small or large. This is really something one individual is taking on by helping people through something that we're all going to have to go to. We're all going to have to do. You do not have to go it alone. I mean, you reach out to this professional that serves as really a liaison between the dying person and their family to advocate for their preferences and ensure a peaceful transition. Once again, that is the End of Life Doula. Fun, play, and ease in death. This is Gary Atencio with CNTV, and if you don't know, now you know.